That day, I simply thought that changing classes meant changing classes. At most, it would be a new desk, new classmates, and I'd continue my invisible scholar life. No one told me beforehand that my life was about to shift into another dimension, where destiny was disguised as a delinquent, and a smile could make my morals waver. I, Alex, 17 years old, an excellent student, was transferred from Class A to Class C because my homeroom teacher said I needed to practice my social adaptability. In other words, you're as quiet as a shadow. Even goldfish wouldn't remember your face. I entered the new classroom at 7:28 a.m., before the bell even rang. Class C seemed much more chaotic than Class A. There were lively conversations, and the smell of buttered bread wafted through the room. Everyone's eyes swept over me for a moment before turning away. Only one person, sitting at the back table in the corner, was propping their chin up, staring at me without blinking. He was dangerously handsome. His uniform shirt was unbuttoned 2 buttons down, and his sleeves were rolled up, revealing a wrist with prominent veins. His black hair was slightly messy, as if he'd just woken up, and his eyes held a hint of a smile that wasn't quite there. "Hey, new kid, my wife's here." I nearly broke my neck turning around so fast. All eyes in the class instantly fell on me, then a collective "oh" of amusement went up. Someone slapped their desk, someone else cheered, and someone even yelled directly at my face, "Welcome to Class C, Daniel's wife." Me? What? His wife? The person named Daniel casually lifted his bag from the chair next to him and waved in my direction. "Come sit here. My wife's spot is still empty on this side." My cheeks burned. I bet I was red from my neck to my ears. I walked over, my left foot landing, my right foot wanting to turn and run away. In the end, I sat down, maintaining a precise 1-meter distance, as per my emotional safety standard. Daniel lightly nudged my arm with his elbow, his voice lazy. "Don't be shy, you can sit a little closer." I gritted my teeth. "Please don't call me wife. My name is Alex." He pondered for a moment, then nodded. Alex is fine too, but I like calling you wife more. It sounds more affectionate." I'd lived for over 6,000 days of my life and never imagined a stranger would call me wife in front of the entire class. And he acted like it was the most obvious thing, as if I were already the biological mother of his cat. The first class was math. I opened my textbook, trying to focus on the board. The teacher was explaining quadratic functions, but next to me, there was a constant rustling of someone writing and drawing. I glanced over at the person named Daniel. I couldn't believe it. He was drawing a chibi portrait of me with messy hair and huge glasses, holding a book up to my face. Next to it was written, "Super cute, super smart wife." I nearly spat blood. "Are you crazy?" I whispered, trying to keep my voice down. Daniel propped his chin up, looking at me with a lazy gaze. "Didn't you want me to stop calling you wife? So I'm drawing it to call you that in my heart." I snapped my head away, not bothering to say anything else, but my ears were red like 2 chili peppers. During recess, I planned to review for physics class, but he insisted on leaning towards me, propping his hand up and staring. "What are you doing?" "I'm losing patience." Admiring my wife. I stood up, grabbed my books, and temporarily moved to the next table. He grinned. "Wherever you sit, you're still my wife." I shot him a death glare, but he just kept smiling. "Do you have psychological problems?" I asked bluntly. "Yeah," Daniel nodded, not a trace of shame. "The problem is I think you're too perfect to be my wife, so I can't help myself." I clamped my mouth shut. There's a type of person you can't argue with using logic, someone who knows they're being unreasonable but deliberately acts cute. I went back to my desk and lowered my head to take notes. He stayed there, occasionally nudging my shoulder, occasionally asking ridiculous questions like, "What does wife like to eat so husband can bring lunch tomorrow?" Or, "Does wife want me to copy notes for her?" Or, "Does wife think she looks very pretty today?" By the end of the day, I had only one thought. I don't know what's wrong with this class, but this person named Daniel has completely shattered my peace. I have a habit no one knows about, and I don't intend for anyone to know. Every Monday morning, I wake up half an hour early to pack my own lunch. It's simple, convenient, and most importantly, homemade food is always the best. Also, I absolutely hate jostling in line at the canteen and facing questions like, "Alex eats solid chicken too," from my classmates who look at me like a saint of studying, thinking I live on the light of knowledge and filtered water. No, I live on braised pork and eggs and stir-fried garlic greens. Today was no different. I brought a bento box neatly packed with rolled egg, meatballs and tomato sauce, and seaweed soup, carefully wrapped in a white box. It wasn't even lunchtime yet, and my stomach was rumbling just thinking about my beloved meal. But he dared to steal it. "What's wife eating for lunch today?" Daniel asked, tilting his head to look at my bag under the desk, his eyes like he was pinpointing a target for assassination. I hugged my bag tightly to myself, seriously warning him not to touch my food. He narrowed his eyes. "Well, that sounds like a challenge. I won't say anything else." I knew the more I responded, the more fuel I'd give him. As soon as the fourth period ended, I immediately took out my lunch, intending to eat quickly before Daniel could snatch it. But I underestimated this guy's speed. As soon as I opened the lid, before I could even pick up the first piece of egg, a black chopstick zipped across the tray and grabbed a meatball. Then he ate it with absolute nonchalance. I gaped. "What the hell are you doing?" Daniel finished chewing before slowly replying, "Eating the husband's portion. My wife's portion is on the left, husband's is on the right." He pointed at the lunch box, drawing imaginary lines to divide it, then looked at me with an "isn't this perfectly reasonable" expression. I snatched the box, hugging it close to my chest, glaring. "Don't call me wife, don't eat my food, and stop saying those weird things." He was silent for a few seconds. I thought I'd scared him off. But then he propped his chin up and mumbled, "My wife cooks and I don't even get to eat it." How disappointing. I couldn't understand what dimension he was living in. And worse, the whole class started cheering. "Daniel, share your food. You can't let your wife go hungry. Alex, your husband eats so little, just give him some." Is anyone shipping these two? I'm starting to feel the sweetness. I wanted to sink into the ground, but there was no ground to sink into. After my lunch was violated, I quietly went to wash my bento box. The restroom behind the school had a small sink, and I usually washed it there because it was less crowded. As I was fumbling with the washing, Daniel appeared, hands in his pockets, leaning lazily against the wall like a school delinquent. "Am I really bothering you that much?" His voice echoed from behind, deep and somewhat pitiful. I wiped the box, turning around. "You keep bothering me." Daniel shrugged and stepped closer. "I just thought I was making a friend." "What kind of friend calls someone wife on the first day?" "A special friend," he smiled. I stayed silent. He stood there, sunlight filtering through the trees, illuminating his slightly messy hair, and I suddenly felt he wasn't as annoying as I'd thought. "The food was really good," Daniel said softly. "Thanks," I replied, surprised. He scratched his head. "I live alone. No one cooks for me. My mom's always on business trips, and I don't know about my dad anymore. I've been eating instant noodles and steamed buns for weeks." I was stunned. Daniel turned and walked away, his voice still playful. "It'd be great if there were more meatballs tomorrow." I didn't answer. But when I got home that night, I cooked a little extra rice. And the next morning, I brought 2 bento boxes to class. I placed the second box on Daniel's desk without saying anything. He walked into class and saw it immediately, breaking into a bright smile. My wife truly is virtuous and capable. I almost regretted it. But when I saw him open the lunchbox and eat each small piece with his spoon as if he was afraid of dropping a single grain of rice, I thought it was worth it. I turned away, pretending not to care, but inside, I felt something strange, a softness, a hint of sweetness. I'm not the type to get sick easily, but perhaps it was from leaving my window open while studying late last night and forgetting to bring a jacket this morning. Plus, the chilly October morning air. By gym class, my head started to feel dizzy. It felt like blood wasn't reaching my brain quickly enough, and my body temperature was as if someone was constantly turning down the thermostat. "Alex, run one more lap around the field then focus," the teacher yelled, his face red as if issuing a warning. I mumbled a tiny yes, almost too weak to shout. Halfway through the lap, I started seeing black spots dancing in my vision. I stopped, trying to keep my balance. And then I felt someone approach from behind. Something soft and warm covered my shoulders, a little heavy, but it instantly made the biting cold disappear. I turned around, and it was Daniel. He didn't say anything, just gently pulled his own gym uniform jacket to cover my shoulders completely, then furrowed his brow and whispered, "Why didn't you say you weren't feeling well?" I tried to answer, but my throat was tight, so I could only shake my head slightly. Daniel let out a light breath, then placed a hand on my forehead. My forehead was cold, his hand warm. With that touch, I felt an electric current zap through my head. "You have a fever," he said. "Why didn't you ask to leave?" "Didn't want to be seen as weak." I answered truthfully, my voice hoarse, as if I'd been shouting into a karaoke mic all night. Daniel looked at me with an indescribable gaze, a strange kind of look, no longer playful or mocking as usual. "Then you have to be better at it," he said. "Next time you're sick, remember to tell me." I opened my mouth to retort that I wasn't obligated to tell him anything. But before I could speak, he walked over, said something to the teacher, then came back and told me, "The teacher said you can keep resting. I'll take you to the infirmary." I stumbled a step, and Daniel caught my shoulder. His hand rested on my shoulder very lightly, as if afraid of crushing something precious. We left the gym field amidst whispers behind us. "Wife, if you're not feeling well, you should call your husband. Daniel is so persistent. Who could resist?" I was so embarrassed I wanted to bite my tongue and die. The infirmary on the 3rd floor was tucked away at the end of the hallway. My school didn't have a permanent nurse, just a room, a bed, a few ice packs, and some basic medicines. Daniel helped me lie down, then, I don't know from where, got a cold towel and placed it on my forehead. I lay there, feeling the cool towel, the scent of Daniel's shirt still lingering on me, a mix of laundry detergent and a hint of mint, familiar yet strange, spreading around my nostrils. "You don't have to do all this," I said hoarsely. Daniel didn't look at me, just sat cross-legged on the plastic chair beside the bed, chin in hand, and quietly said, "I want to." I turned my head to look at him, and he looked back at me. "You keep teasing me. What do you really want?" I asked, though my voice lacked the strength to be sharp. "I want my wife to look at me seriously." "Don't call me wife." I frowned, my voice low. Daniel rested his hand on his knee, tapping his chin lightly. "Okay, I won't call you that. If I'm serious today, will you listen?" I stayed silent. Something slowly shifted in the air between us. He continued, his voice no longer frivolous. "I saw you the first time you transferred to class. You sat neatly, your eyes avoiding everyone, and your handwriting was beautiful. I just thought, this kid looks easy to bully. But the more I watched, the more I liked the way you faced everything, calm, indifferent, and then super cute when you got angry. I called you wife because I didn't know what else to do to get your attention." Daniel looked directly into my eyes. "You might not like it, but I still want to say it." For the first time since I met Daniel, my heart skipped a beat. I didn't know if it was because of the fever or the way he looked at me, but everything felt hazy and soft. I turned my face to the wall and quietly said, "No one has ever cared about me like this." Daniel chuckled softly. "Then from now on, let me be the first." That afternoon, I slept a long time in the infirmary. When I woke up, the clock showed 4 o'clock. The box of milk next to me had cooled, and on top of it was a neatly written note. "Wife, sleep well." I went back to class to get my things. "Don't forget to drink the milk. Daniel." I held the note, feeling my heart soften little by little. There are moments that don't need to be loud or elaborate. Just a jacket when you're cold, a box of milk when you're tired, and someone calling you wife with a sincere smile is enough to stir your emotions. After that afternoon in the infirmary, I thought I would sleep deeply, wake up, and everything would return to normal. Daniel would continue to call me wife in front of the whole class, and I would continue to blush and pretend not to care. But no, nothing went back to normal. The problem was I no longer found him annoying. In fact, I even started to anticipate his teasing. Every morning when I walked into class, my eyes would instinctively look towards the seat next to mine. If Daniel was there, I'd sigh in relief. If he wasn't, I wouldn't admit it, but there would be a slight pang of disappointment. Was I getting infected by Daniel? On Tuesday afternoon, it started to rain. It wasn't heavy, but it drizzled like a dreary background song. I forgot my umbrella, and dismissal time was exactly the kind of light rain that was enough to soak my white uniform shirt. I stood waiting under the eaves with a few other classmates, hugging my bag to my chest, my face scrunched up. Tired, hungry, and hating the rain, the perfect combo for my mood to plummet. Suddenly, a black umbrella tilted over my head. Daniel was still in his usual lazy manner, his bag slung over one shoulder, and in his hand, he held out a box of soy milk to me. For my wife, to cheer you up. I didn't take it. He didn't withdraw his hand either, just smiled as usual, his eyes slightly crinkling under the umbrella. Drink it so I don't feel like I'm bothering you. I was a little startled. That wasn't a joke. 1 second ago, I was about to throw the milk at him. The next, I reached out and took it. As I held it, I realized the milk box was slightly warm. He had probably been holding it in his hand the whole way. Thanks, I said, my voice so soft it almost dissolved into the sound of the rain. Oh, wow, you're unusually obedient today, he chuckled. I turned away, annoyed, but for some reason, my cheeks flushed hot. It seemed that every time he teased me, I couldn't get angry anymore. I just felt like my indifferent shell was slowly being peeled away, little by little. We walked home together under the single black umbrella. A cold streak of rain hit my sleeve, and Daniel unexpectedly grabbed my wrist, pulling me closer. Be careful, you'll get your shirt wet. You're being overly cautious, I growled. He grinned. Well, a husband needs to know how to take care of his wife, right? I shot him a glare as sharp as a knife. But then, I couldn't bring myself to refute him. The next morning, I found a packet of tissues and a box of cough drops in my desk drawer. The attached note still had his characteristic chicken scratch handwriting. Don't let a cold make you forget your husband, wife. Daniel. I burst out laughing, unable to help it. Damn it. He was starting to make me feel like days without Daniel's teasing were empty. I put the note in my pencil case. That case was now full of his silly notes. But for some reason, I couldn't bear to throw any of them away. Today, my class had an evening study session. The classroom was quiet, with only the sound of the lecture and the wind whistling outside the window. I was taking notes when I heard Daniel whisper right next to my ear. Wife, do you really hate me? I froze. He asked in a voice that wasn't teasing anymore. He genuinely wanted to know. I tilted my head to look at him. Daniel's eyes weren't lazy like usual now. They held a very slight, very subtle hint of nervousness. But I saw it clearly. I cleared my throat, turned back to the board, and then, as if on reflex, I softly replied, No, I don't. It was an unplanned answer. My heart just didn't want to lie at that moment. Daniel seemed to freeze for a second. Then he let out a very small, very soft chuckle, as if afraid of disturbing the air around him. You just admitted it, didn't you? His voice drawled, heavy with triumph. I immediately regretted it. No, I didn't. I tried to backtrack. Yes, you did. Wife said she doesn't hate me, so that means she likes me. He leaned closer to my ear and whispered, his warm breath brushing my neck. I slammed my hand on the desk. Shut up right now. The class turned to look, and I was so embarrassed I wanted to crawl into my desk. Daniel, meanwhile, sat there giggling like he'd won the lottery. This bastard truly couldn't be left alone for a second. But the problem was, I didn't actually want him to stop bothering me. After transferring to Class C, I quickly realized one thing. Daniel was a fake delinquent. I didn't just make that up. I witnessed an event today that started with a small shock. No, more accurately, it was a slap to my innocent belief in Daniel's delinquent image. He was the type of student who never brought a notebook, borrowed books, shared pens, and even during tests, he'd just put his head down and sleep soundly. But today, our class had a surprise math test. The teacher walked in, his face as stern as a national exam proctor. After he handed out the papers, everyone panicked. A bunch of students mumbled curses, some flipped through books, others frantically typed on calculators. I was fine, though a bit surprised. And Daniel, the perpetual non-studier, sitting next to me, started writing. I instinctively glanced over, not to cheat, but out of pure curiosity, as if witnessing my neighbor's cat suddenly learning to play chess. He was serious, his handwriting incredibly neat, his pen strokes quick and decisive, even underlining formulas carefully, step by step, exactly like me. I was practically petrified. He did the problems so smoothly, so logically, without hesitation. And I just sat there, pen in hand, my eyes glued to him for a full 10 minutes. After submitting our papers, I waited for Daniel to leave class, then secretly asked the math teacher, "Teacher, what score did Daniel get on the last test?" The teacher gave me a strange look, then slowly replied, 10 points. He got everything right. He's been good at math since junior high, but he just pretends to be dumb all the time. I stood there stunned. Only one thought echoed in my head: Daniel is cosplaying a delinquent to fool the world. And I was the world in this story. After school, I stood at the gate and saw Daniel holding a sandwich, chewing and grinning with his friends. I walked up to him without beating around the bush. "You've been smart all along, haven't you?" Daniel stopped chewing. "Did the math teacher rat me out?" he asked, his eyes sparkling with amusement. I stared him down. "Why do you pretend to be bad at studying?" He clicked his tongue, still holding his sandwich, eating as he spoke. "At home, my mom says if I'm too good, I'll be forced to go to extra classes. At school, if I stand out, I'll be called on to answer questions all the time. Pretending to be a bit dumb is easier. So why pretend to be dumb in front of me?" I retorted. This time, Daniel didn't answer immediately. He turned to look at me, his eyes losing their usual playful glint. "Because if I was serious, you wouldn't pay attention to me." I was speechless. Daniel scratched his head, shrugging. "I wasn't planning on playing this game for long. I just thought you were so cute at first, so I wanted to tease you a bit." Who knew the more I teased, the more I didn't want to stop. I sighed, not knowing whether to be angry or laugh. He was smart and diligent, but hid it, while I was a genuine top student, led around by this fake top student for a whole semester. I crossed my arms and looked at him. "So when were you planning on telling me?" Daniel grinned. "I thought you'd figure it out sooner. Who knew my wife was pretty dumb too?" I clenched the strap of my bag, gritting my teeth. "I'm going to punch you right now. Go ahead and punch me." "If wife punches, husband takes it," he said casually, then ran off before I could even raise my hand. I watched his retreating figure, my heart as chaotic as a pile of unsolved integral formulas. That night, I tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. In my head, I kept replaying the image of Daniel during the test, focused eyes, a serious grip on his pen, his brow slightly furrowed, completely unlike the carefree demeanor he usually showed me. I realized I knew too little about him. I always thought Daniel was just a carefree boy who liked to tease. But in reality, he knew how to live easily in a high-pressure environment, knew how to hide his true brilliance to avoid trouble, and could like someone so much that he willingly lowered himself in front of them. He said that if I were serious, he wouldn't pay attention to me. But he didn't know that it was precisely when I saw him at his most serious that, damn it, I liked him even more than when he teased me by calling me wife. I pulled the blanket over my face and mumbled a tiny phrase to myself, "You idiot. Who told you to hide it so well?" Today was Thursday. I walked into class not exactly excited, but with a strange sense of anticipation. It was like when you're so used to opening your lunchbox and seeing your favorite dish that if it's suddenly missing one day, your meal just tastes bland. Was Daniel my favorite dish? No, it wasn't that extreme. I thought so until I pulled out my chair and looked next to me. The seat was empty. No Daniel. No wife, a wife, every morning. No grinning eyes with a box of soy milk. No scribbled notes stuffed in my desk drawer. I sat still for a few seconds, reassuring myself. Maybe he was just late. Maybe the homeroom teacher was holding him back for not submitting his application to retake literature for 3 consecutive semesters. But then the bell rang and the first period began. His seat remained empty. All day, I couldn't focus. The empty feeling next to me drove me crazy with restlessness. I didn't know why I felt this way. Usually, I studied alone, quietly, and with high efficiency. But ever since he started sitting next to me, bothering me every day, calling me silly names, and grinning like an untamed puppy, his absence made the classroom feel muted. During math class, I unconsciously looked to my side, Daniel's pen was still there. The pen with the chewed-up end. I used to scold him for acting like a child. His pencil case was still in his desk drawer, and none of his book pages were dog-eared. But strangely, looking at those messy things, I felt a pang of longing. In the afternoon, I couldn't hold back anymore and asked a friend sitting behind me, "Where's Daniel?" She shrugged. "Don't know. Seems like he went back to his hometown." "Back to his hometown?" I repeated. "Yeah, heard it was some family matter." I fell silent. A cold wave ran down my spine. That night, I opened my pencil case. In the secret compartment was a small, old sticky note from Daniel. "You're too smart. So, if I ever ditch school, remember to copy notes for me, okay? Daniel." I read it over and over. When he said that, I'd scoffed and muttered, "Who'd bother copying notes for you?" But now I sat there, pen in hand, flipping through my math textbook, quietly copying every formula, every example, even highlighting the headings. I copied because I was afraid that if he came back tomorrow, I'd have nothing to give him but a cold, empty seat and a belated reproach. On the second day Daniel was absent, it rained. Just like that day, the day he gave me his umbrella, pulled my wrist close to his chest to shield me from the rain, and mumbled something that made my heart skip a beat. This time, I had an umbrella, but no one shared it with me. This time, I stood alone, and no one slipped a warm box of milk into my hand. When I got home, I sent a short message. "Heard you went back to your hometown. Are you okay?" The message turned blue, showing it was sent, but there was no red receipt. 1 hour, 2 hours, then 3 hours passed with no reply. I lay sprawled on my bed, eyes fixed on my phone screen, as if the world would light up again just by seeing Daniel's name pop up. He didn't read the message, and I didn't send another, because I didn't know what I was in his eyes. A friend, he teased, a game of calling someone wife for fun, or someone who truly made him want to come back whenever he was tired. I didn't dare to guess, but one thing I knew very well: a classroom without Daniel was as sad as a song missing its final note. I didn't sleep well. My dream that night was strange. I dreamed I was standing in the middle of the schoolyard, rain falling, my clothes soaked, searching alone for that familiar silhouette. I searched and searched, but couldn't find it. And when I turned around, Daniel stood there, just a few steps away, holding an umbrella, smiling, his eyes crinkling as usual. He said something, but I couldn't hear it because at that moment, my heart was beating so loudly it drowned out all the surrounding sounds. I used to think I was a very rational person. The kind of person who wouldn't lose sleep over an unreturned message, wouldn't lose focus over an empty seat, and certainly wouldn't find breakfast bland just because no one handed me a cup of milk anymore. But after 2 days without Daniel, I realized my rationality wasn't strong enough to withstand someone who liked to call me wife every day. Saturday morning was bright and sunny, with an autumn breeze mingling gently with the sunlight. I arrived at school earlier than usual, carrying 2 lunchboxes, intending to quietly place the second one in the empty desk drawer next to mine, as if it were a habit ingrained in my daily rhythm. I still hadn't received any messages from Daniel. He still hadn't come back. I sighed, sat down, and opened my textbook, but my mind was blank, unable to comprehend what I was reading. Then, the classroom door swung open, and a gust of wind rushed in, carrying a familiar scent. I looked up. He walked in, hands in his pockets, his lazy gait just as it always was. But unlike other times, today Daniel had a small bandage on his left wrist. I sprang to my feet, blurting out before my conscious mind could stop me, "Are you hurt?" Daniel paused, then chuckled. "Oh, is wife missing her husband?" I immediately plopped back into my seat, turning my face away. "Who cares?" I mumbled, but my ears burned red. Daniel calmly sat in the seat beside me, tilted his head, looked at me for a moment, then softly said, "I went back to my hometown for 2 days. Had a bit of family stuff." I remained silent, not asking anything further. I had no right, even though a million questions were screaming in my mind. Daniel seemed to read my thoughts. He propped his hands on the desk, leaning closer, his voice dropping. My dad showed up again, wanting to drag me back into his dry plans. I disagreed, so we argued. My little brother got caught in the middle, so I had to take him to my mom's place. I looked up at him. For the first time since I met Daniel, his eyes held no trace of a smile, only a hint of weariness that he was trying to hide. As if that sadness was only allowed to appear for a few brief seconds before he pulled the curtain of humor back over it. I didn't know what to say. I just nodded slightly, then opened my lunchbox and pushed the second one towards him. "Eat," I said. I prepared an extra portion. Daniel froze, then gave a very faint smile. Not the teasing kind, nor the triumphant kind, but a smile of gratitude. "My wife is truly thoughtful," he whispered. "Husband is so touched he almost cried." I glared at him. "Say one more silly thing, and I'm taking the lunchbox back." No, I'm serious." He looked at me for a moment, then lowered his voice. "When I was back home, I thought about something. If I came back, I had to tell you." I looked up. Daniel put down his chopsticks, laced his fingers together, his thumbs gently rubbing against each other, a small habit I'd noticed when he was nervous. "You know what?" he said. "When I was hurt, the first person I thought of was you. Not my mom, not my friends. It was you." I felt my heart skip a beat. "I didn't plan to say it so soon," Daniel continued, "to ruin our fun dynamic. But that day in the infirmary, when you were lying there, face flushed, trembling with fever, I just thought, if I can't take care of you for the rest of my life, who else could do it?" I couldn't say anything. My mouth opened and then closed. Even in mathematics, there was no formula to help me solve this chaotic emotion. Daniel pulled a small piece of paper from his pocket, an admission ticket to a theme park. "Tomorrow's the weekend. If you're not busy, would you go with me?" he asked. His eyes weren't as confident as usual. They held a slight tremble. I looked at the ticket, then at him. Yes, almost slipped out of my mouth, but I didn't say it. I just nodded. Daniel beamed like a child who had just gotten a perfect score. He held the ticket up, waving it in front of me. "Consider it a promise. I'll take you to the most fun place in the city to make up for 2 days of not seeing your handsome husband." I chuckled out loud. He still couldn't shake that narcissistic habit. But this time, I didn't feel annoyed. I looked at him, my heart as light as silk fluttering in the wind. And in that brief moment, I suddenly thought, perhaps what they call falling for someone is when you feel that a theme park ticket from his hand is more precious than a perfect score on an exam. I always thought I was a rational person, someone who knew how to clearly distinguish what was worth bothering about and what should be ignored. For example, just because someone calls you wife doesn't mean they actually like you. Or, for example, if Daniel talks to someone else, I have no right to care. But today, all those logics collapsed in less than 3 minutes. At noon, as I was returning to class from the library, intending to sit down and catch a quick nap, I heard whispers in the hallway. Whoa, did that girl from the other class really confess? Yeah, they say she wrote a proper letter. It's shocking. You need a lot of guts to confess to Daniel. I froze in the classroom doorway, my hand still clutching my bag strap. For some reason, my heart gave a slight jolt. When I entered, Daniel was still sitting there. He held a piece of paper folded into quarters in his hand, a slight curve on his lips. It wasn't his usual wide grin, but a deeper, harder-to-read smile. I walked to my desk and sat down without greeting him. He still didn't look at me, just slowly refolded the paper and put it in his bag. I glanced over. It was light pink paper with a cat drawing. I didn't need anyone to tell me it wasn't a test paper. That entire afternoon, I didn't say anything to Daniel. No wife, a wife, no soy milk box, no scribbled notes with handwriting like chicken scratch. The seat next to me was silent, as if the person who sat there had never been the loud Daniel who knew how to make others' hearts flutter. I felt uneasy inside, not an explosive anger, but a strange feeling like being forgotten. As if today, I was no one's wife anymore. I scolded myself. Didn't you used to hate that title so much? But for some reason, when it was no longer mentioned, I felt so empty that I wanted to provoke the person who said it, just so he would tease me again and call me those silly names. After school, I slowly packed my things, pretending to be distracted. Daniel didn't say anything either. He just slung his bag over his shoulder and walked out first. Just as I reached the classroom door, I heard him quietly say to someone, "Thanks. But I already like someone." I froze. Who did he like? That question clung to me all the way home. I told myself I shouldn't be curious, but my heart beat faster than usual. It pounded so loudly I could almost hear it echoing in my chest. That night, I opened my phone and scrolled through the only message I had ever sent to Daniel. He still hadn't replied to that message. I didn't text him again. I wasn't the type to initiate contact. But I lay on my phone like an idiot, letting all sorts of thoughts wander. What if Daniel accepted the confession? What if he stopped calling me wife from tomorrow on? What if he liked someone else? My heart tightened. I wasn't sure if it was because of the silly thoughts or the truth I didn't want to face. I liked Daniel more than I thought. The next morning, I arrived at class a little early. No one else was there. I sat alone, took out a book, but my eyes were glued to the classroom door. 10 minutes later, Daniel walked in. He saw me, paused slightly, then gave a soft smile. I thought my wife was going to skip school today. I didn't answer. Daniel put his bag down and sat next to me. A moment later, he pushed a sandwich wrapped in a paper bag towards me. I made it last night. I was going to eat it alone at first, but then I thought it would be strange not to share with my wife. I looked up at him. His eyes weren't joking. "I didn't accept the letter," Daniel said softly. "And I didn't reply because the person I like already got awkwardly jealous." I stiffened. "You knew?" I asked. He smiled and nodded. "You didn't say a word to me all afternoon. You know, for someone like you, silence is the loudest sound." I lowered my head, unsure what to say. My face was burning. Daniel reached out and tucked my bangs behind my ear, his movement as gentle as a breeze. He whispered, "I like you. I really like you." That day, for the first time, I ate a sandwich made by Daniel. It wasn't very good. One edge was burnt, and the cheese wasn't fully melted. But I ate all of it because it was the only food that made my heart beat so fast. And from that moment, I knew I was no longer just the wife in Daniel's casual teasing. I was the only person in his eyes. From the day Daniel admitted he liked me, I started losing sleep. Not the restless kind from studying for exams or drinking bubble tea at night, but the kind where I'd lie in bed, covers pulled tight, my heart pounding just because of a sentence that had replayed in my head 100 times. "I like you. I really like you." Only 6 words, but my brain processed them as if I just finished reading a 600-page romance novel. I started paying more attention to Daniel. He was still the one who opened his mouth and called me wife, but this time, it wasn't teasing or flirty. Every glance, every word contained a kind of gentleness I never thought I'd find in someone like him. Daniel wasn't pushy. He didn't ask me if I liked him, nor did he demand an answer. He just stayed there, as before, yet different. Every time he called me wife, I no longer glared, but my heart felt a gentle flutter. Every time he smiled at me, I'd lower my head, pretending to look for something in my bag to hide my blushing face. That night, I went to bed early. I lay on my side, hugging my pillow, my mind still swirling with a jumble of emotions I hadn't had time to categorize. And then, in that half-asleep, half-awake state, I dreamed of him. I dreamed Daniel and I were standing under a tree in the schoolyard. He didn't call me wife as usual. Instead, he stepped closer, very close, so close that I could smell the faint scent of his uniform shirt. Then he wrapped his arms around me. The hug wasn't strong. It was a very gentle embrace, as if he was afraid I would break. I heard his voice in the dream. "I don't need you to like me right away. I just need you to stop avoiding me." I didn't answer. In the dream, I just stayed silent, but my arms wrapped around his back, gently tightening. The dream was so warm I didn't want to wake up. The next morning, I opened my eyes, my heart still beating fast. My face was burning as if someone had just read that dream aloud in the middle of the schoolyard. I buried my face in my pillow, mumbling, "It's not real, it's not real." But the memory of the dream remained perfectly clear, down to every vague touch. I thought about telling Daniel, then stopped myself. No way. If I told him, that guy would definitely tease me about it for the rest of my life. But just like Murphy's Law, what you try to hide the most is what gets discovered. In the middle of class that day, Daniel leaned close to my ear and whispered, "Wife, what's wrong? You look strangely dazed and cute today." I jumped, almost dropping my pen. "I'm fine," I stammered. Daniel narrowed his eyes at me, then propped his chin up, looking cunning like a fox. "Or did you dream of me?" The pen in my hand actually dropped. He slapped the table. "Oh my God, I got it. Wife dreamed of husband." I blushed, burying my face in my desk, using my math book to cover half of it. "Are you crazy? Who dreams of you?" Daniel grinned. "Then why was your face red like a ripe tomato when you came to class this morning? And your eyes were sparkling, dazed as if you lost your soul. If you didn't dream of me, who did you dream of?" I didn't answer, nor did I dare to look up. He continued to ramble, his voice low but full of excitement. "Was I handsome in your dream? Did I hug you? Did I kiss you? Wait, did you perhaps dream of me doing something inappropriate? Shut up." I hissed through gritted teeth. The whole class turned to look. I wanted to disappear into the ground, while Daniel leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, smiling like someone who had won a great battle. During recess, I slammed my head on the table. "You're truly shameless." Daniel propped his chin. "Shamelessness can't feed a wife, you know." I glared at him. "I'm not your wife." "If not wife, then what?" he asked. His eyes suddenly softened. "Girlfriend." I choked. "Lover," he continued to ask, his voice like a breeze, but each word as heavy as a stone. I didn't answer. Daniel chuckled softly. "Or the person I like?" I looked up at him. His eyes held a gentle light that I couldn't ignore. And for the first time in my life, I didn't avoid his gaze. I said very softly, "If that day was a dream, I hope it's real." Daniel froze for a second. Then he smiled. It wasn't a mocking smile, nor a loud one. It was just a smile, enough to warm that entire afternoon in my heart. I used to think that if Daniel ever truly confessed to me, he would definitely make a huge scene. There would surely be flowers, balloons, a portable speaker, and a booming "Wife, will you marry me?" that echoed through the heavens. He was that kind of person, always making everything ridiculous and annoyingly endearing. But that day, when he actually spoke his feelings, everything was surprisingly quiet. Friday afternoon, the last extra class ended earlier than expected. The teacher had an urgent matter, and the whole class happily packed up and left like bees from a disturbed hive. I was about to go straight home, but Daniel pulled my hand, his palm warmer than usual. "Can you come somewhere with me for a bit?" he asked, not smiling. I paused for a few seconds, then nodded slightly. We didn't go home, nor did we stop by the bubble tea shop as usual. Daniel led me to a park near the school, a deserted place with dense trees, so quiet that you could hear the wind rustling through each leaf. Dusk was falling, and the sunset light filtered through the gaps in the trees, casting a honey-colored glow on his shoulders. He turned to look at me. "Do you remember?" he asked, his voice deep and slow. "The first day I called you wife?" I chuckled softly. "Hard to forget." "At that time, I wasn't thinking anything profound," he said, lowering his head, hands in his pockets. "I just thought you were too cute, and I wanted to tease you until you blushed." "And I did," I replied. "Yeah, I blushed so much I got addicted." I chuckled, then fell silent again. A gentle silence settled between us, as if all the world's sounds had retreated to yield to this moment. "Wife," Daniel suddenly said. I looked up, a little surprised. He smiled gently. "We've graduated. I still want to call you wife. Not out of habit, but because I really want to marry you." My eyes widened. Not in surprise from emotion, but in disbelief that this shameless guy dared to propose in the middle of the schoolyard when I hadn't even signed my name on anyone's shirt yet. "Are you crazy?" I scolded, my face red as a tomato. "Yes, I've been crazy for you for 3 years, Daniel said, taking out a delicate necklace from his pocket. "The pendant is a chibi drawing I did of you in 10th grade. Now it's engraved on a small silver piece. It's not a ring, because I know it's not time yet. But wear this, to remind you that you're the one I'm going to marry." I bit my lip. I'm not good at expressing emotions. I used to ignore feelings, used to run from my own heart. But now, I didn't want to run anymore. I held out my hand, letting him put the necklace around my neck, each movement slow and gentle. Daniel admired me for a moment, then whispered, "It's beautiful. But still not as beautiful as your eyes when you blush because of me." I glared at him but didn't retort. Because honestly, I didn't want anyone else to see that blushing face of mine, except him. That afternoon, when I got home, I opened my backpack and took out my white uniform shirt. On the chest, someone had written in marker, "Thank you for being my youth. My dear wife, no matter how many years pass, I will still call you that. Someday, I will call you by your official title, my wife. Daniel." I placed my hand over the words, my heart filled with peace. No need for flowery promises, no need for diamond rings, no need for the whole world's blessings. Just needing someone who, after 3 years, still persistently called me wife. Just needing someone who, step by step, turned a joke into a lifelong proposal.